You're on. Yay, very professional. Nice. All right. All right, let's go ahead and talk about relationships with the top.
Just real quick. I'm so sorry. Just sitting in a rush.
Yeah, I changed my mind.
Anybody look familiar?
Oh my God.
I knew I heard it go off when she was.
Okay, now turn around so the camera can catch you, Sheila. Very good.
Sheila Miller, everybody. Well done. Good showing humility there. All right, we're at the top of page 4 on your outline. We're going to talk about relationships. Very important. Okay, so here, this is important. When I took over Oaks, or right before, I would ask people, like I'd be somehow involved in the ministry, and there's a ministry group, there are 2 people on staff, and I'd be like, who's leader, who's helper? And this was the answer I'd get almost every time, was, well, I mean, I'm kind of leading, and they're kind of leading, and then I'm helping a little bit, and then they'll come in and help, and I'd be like, stop talking. I said, no. Because this is, and so the first thing I instituted was this. There is one leader in every ministry group, one only. And there is one. This is a little my thing, so might get loud. And there's one helper. Sometimes there's more than one helper, but typically one helper. Here's why. They're 2 very different roles. They're not the same role. And if I put you as leader, you're leading. I don't put you as leader to kind of help, and you are leading. You have a responsibility to bear, okay? The leader is the one who sets the course for the ministry. Yes, you're letting the seeker give you the information, but you're the one that's gently guiding them where you need to go. You're like somebody who's a guide in the jungle or something. You know the course, and you're the one that has to lead everybody else, okay? And you're the leader because, there's certain aspects about who you are and your experiences and our assessment of you that makes you the leader, all right? And that makes you responsible for everything in the room, start to finish. As I've said before, over my course of leading this, there's usually about maybe 1 or 2 per class, where I'll get a phone call from the leader of the class and say, we had a situation last night, and this happened in ministry, and we need you to get involved. First thing I'm going to do is call who? The leader. Because whatever happened was their responsibility one way or the other. And so I'll say, what happened? Walk me through what was going on, okay? Because, like I say, if you are the leader, and you guys know this, you want to be the leader. You're the one that I want to be the one calling the shots, And so that kind of responsibility doesn't shake you or scare you, And so you want to be the one that is in charge of the environment. So if something happened, and there's a story I'll tell you later about this, is that you're going to be the one that's supposed to take an action on it. And and there may be a coaching moment in there. If you don't, that's fine. You're not going to do everything perfect. But I want one person that's completely accountable for what's going on. All right. Now let's talk about the helper. The helper is there to help the leader. All right, to help to watch what they're doing, see what course they're taking, and support that. As a helper, you do not get to choose, the main course of action, what's going on. You are supporting what the leader's doing. All right, you're not going to jump in there and change. Well, let's actually go this direction. That's not going to happen. The helpers you're sitting there and you're watching the leader, what direction they're going. You're praying about what they're doing and how can I support that. All right. Now that doesn't mean that when you're taking time, the leader says, "Hey, what do you have?" It doesn't mean you can't kind of go speak what's on your heart. But you're just not going to, like I said, you're not going to suggest a major course of action change. So to my mind, the helper is going to sit there. The best helpers for me are the ones that see the stuff that I don't see. Okay. Carolina was my helper last time. She did a tremendous job of I was like, oh God, I didn't even think about that. She did a great job of coming in, and it's seamless. You know, it's not a jarring course of change. Like she just flowed right in there and said, "Well, what about this?" And then she did a great job helping me out. I was just grabbing a lot of the stuff that I hadn't seen. That's what a good helper does. Okay? Observer. The better you observe, the closer you observe, and the better questions you ask afterwards in the debrief, the better you're going to lead. You know, the better helper you're going to be when it comes to your time. So don't see it as just this passive thing where I'm sitting there just kind of like, okay. In your mind, you gotta be asking the questions in your mind. Like right now, what would I be doing if I was leading? Okay, what question would I be asking? And then say, well, why did they ask that question then? You know, the more active you are and you're observing, the quicker you're going to be a really good and effective helper and or leader, if that's what you're called for. Okay. Conversations with the helper. This is another standard. Before ministry, the helper and leader need to chat about exactly what's going to happen, or as best what the leader wants to happen in the ministry room, right? So when I have a new helper, I'll just say it's the same every time. I say I'm going to go through this, and this. When I'm done at that point, I'm going to look at you. I'm going to say, what do you have? And at that point, I want you to be ready with something, okay? And so that way you're not being surprised. You know, what I try not to do is surprise them in the middle of something and just go, oh, what do you think? And they're not ready. You want to support them. You want to have their back. You know, but you want to be very specific about this is where I'm going to stop and tell you and ask you and any other instructions. I usually try to keep it pretty general. But whatever it is, you need to have that conversation ahead of. That's a standard. Okay. Don't just wing it and I'll see what, you know, you owe that to the helper to do. You can't just go, well, you'll see when I say go. You know, that's not really fair to them, you know. And it's not setting them up for success. So make sure that you have let them know whatever they need to know about when you're going into ministry. Okay, that's a standard. Also, standard, the ministry team will debrief and pray together following the ministry. We're going to talk more about that tomorrow, but I just wanted to let you know, kind of put that in place, that debrief and pray is going to be very essential. Relinquishing the person you just did ministry with. And then having an in-depth conversation with the leader as to what just happened, all right? This is the part where you really, if you're a helper and you want to be a leader, that's going to be invaluable time. You know, right then and there, especially because if you're anything like me, once I walk away from it, I'm not going to remember probably a lot of stuff. I've been doing this for a decade. I can't, you know, it all starts to blend together for me. So right then and there, when you're both kind of in that moment as a helper, and here's the thing, take as long as you want. I'm telling you that right now. And if you're a leader, your responsibility is to stay there until all the questions are answered, because that's their time as a helper to learn, you know. Like I said, there's a difference. There's a reason why somebody's a helper and somebody's a leader. And more I get conversations about helpers that want to be leaders. And so if that's your desire, get better at ask those questions. Ask good questions and be really intentional and deliberate about learning and getting better and thinking more like a leader. Okay? We're going to break up Marsha. Sorry, it's brand again. My mind is just. We're talking about maximizing the leader-helper relationship.
Right. So he just said to you that the conversation between the leader and the helper, that's now a standard. That's new. We've never required that in the past. So we want to talk to you about how to talk to one another and how to really be able to maximize helpers. What we found is we started mixing up people in Home Oaks, and people they were working in ministry with different helpers, were going to work with different leaders. Leaders are all different. Helpers are all different. They get in the ministry room, they don't know who's doing what, you know? So we have said this is a standard. You guys need to have a conversation prior to. Probably not 2 minutes before, you know? I mean, try to make it happen a week before or something like that. So here are some things that you can do during that. First of all, leaders, it's your responsibility to have the conversation. You're the one that needs to make sure that you get with the helper. When you do that, you need to describe what your ministry style is. My ministry style might look and feel a little bit different than, well, I know my ministry style looks and feels different than some of the other leaders. So just let your helper know that, so they have an idea of what to anticipate. So I'm going to say this to them. I'm going to say to them that I let them tell their whole story. And when they're done telling their story, I listen for where I think that we might need to go, which parent we might need to go to. And I might suggest that, and if I don't have a strong sense of that, then I might ask them where they would like to go. Here's something to think about. Usually the one that they want to talk about is not the one that has created the most harm. It's usually the other parent. So you can know that, but let them do what they want. So I start with forgiveness, I go to relinquishment, then we're going to do vows and curses. We're going to, I kind of talk about the roadmap of what I usually find. And sometimes I change it up. I mean, you're the minute, you kind of change it up. But have that conversation with your helper. Then find out from your helper what they're comfortable in doing. So some helpers are totally comfortable with leading somebody through breaking a vow. If you're going to have them do that, tell them that. It is okay if they use their ministry sheet, if they do that, that's okay. Their prayers sheet, we don't care about that. But give them, find out what it is that they're comfortable with. So can they lead a prayer to break a vow? Can they lead a prayer to break a curse? To renounce a curse, to renounce a judgment. One of the things that you need to find out from your helpers is what is their comfort level in managing the room. So I'm a helper a lot, and oftentimes I'm a helper for Sheila. And what I know about Sheila is that she has some limited vision out of one eye, like her periphery vision. So I do a lot. So when she's focused on a seeker, I do a lot. I almost hit you with that, didn't I?
Well, I can see you.
Yeah.
Over here.
Right. She doesn't have it over there. So I know that when I'm her helper, I have more of a responsibility of managing the seekers in the room. So if you're a leader, talk about that. And how would you like your helper to do it? Is it okay if the helper got up out of their chair and went over and just placed a hand on somebody or gave them, or we're going to talk about the ways in which you do it, but empower your helpers to help you where you want them to and find out what their comfort level is in doing that. Agree on how your helper is going to be invited to speak. So if there's a leader and a helper, then the leader has to make a determination of when the helper is going to speak. And so figure out how you're going to do that. So Anna was my helper last year, and I'm like, okay, so I might look at you, and sometimes I might just say your name. So I would say to her, in just a minute, I'm going to ask Anna to la 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 la. So I gave her a clear heads up of what was coming. So a lot of times we kick it to our helper because we just don't know what to say. But chances are your helper doesn't know what to say either. If you're a helper, be ready for that. You can plan for that. Have something. And it doesn't have to be like you have to say something mind-blowing, just say, wow, that must have been tough. I'm so sorry you went through that. You can just show compassion, and it's something to say. When I help Sheila, if I'm a helper for Sheila, or if she's a helper for me for that matter, a lot of times I will have her pray. I'll have her do the prayers because that gives me the time to be connected with God and for me to be thinking about, okay, what am I going to do next? You can find out if your helper is comfortable with doing an opening prayer or a closing prayer or praying for the room. Don't call on them and ask them to do that if you haven't kind of negotiated it, but at the same time, use them. They hear from God too. And what we need, and I do oftentimes say to my helper, do you have anything that I'm missing? It's okay to ask that. Sometimes we'll be like, if we're not communicating, I've done this with our helpers too. I just have to say, okay, you're going to say to the seeker, give me just a second. We need to have a sidebar. And we've literally said, we've literally talked about, now we don't be like, Should we renounce the spirit of death? I mean, we don't do that. I mean, we don't do that. You know, you gotta be sensitive to it. But there's nothing wrong with you guys being a team together because you're in a team about the person's healing. Oh my gosh, you're loving them in such a great way. So the conversation of finding out what the helper is comfortable with is really, really important. Okay, so I said that's the leader's responsibility. So helpers, if your leader doesn't do it, be their helper, right? And so say, hey, we haven't talked about that. Can we talk about that? There's a whole big difference when you are a helper and you're waiting. If you're waiting for your leader to come, you're waiting, they're not. So you've got two options. You could be like, well, they are a cruddy leader. Or, you know what, I'm their helper and I'm interested in being a help. So let me be prepared. We're telling you it's coming, the conversation's coming. So be prepared to talk about how you feel about stuff. What you're comfortable with, what you're not comfortable with. You're not comfortable with it, say that. If you are, say that. You know, and I just had this conversation. There's a couple of people that are going to be leading ministry for the first time, Anna's who I was talking to. But we had our morning leaders and our evening leaders and the three of us in a room. And we were talking the other day about how we learn to do ministry. And I think there were 7 of us, and I think 5 out of the 7 of us just got kind of kicked in there, you know, before we were really ready. At least that's the way we felt. But somebody felt comfortable with us, and somebody was willing to be there to support us. So if you're not, you know, as a leader, give them some space to be able to try something on. Give them some space to be able to lead through the prayers. Do that, because that's how we learn too. Okay. Outside the ministry room, a leader and a helper, I am just going to say this. When you have a ministry group, you're a team. And so that means that you decide how you manage homework together, how you review homework. It means that when you have a conversation with a seeker, you tell the other person about it. It means, remember we said we do ministry together, right? Helper and a leader. So there shouldn't be any one-off conversations that are happening here or there. We're going to do that together. So if you have, when I say one-off conversations, that's not what I mean. I misspoke. One-off ministries. There's a difference between doing ministry and having a conversation and praying for somebody. Way different. We'll even get into that more. But if you are a team, then you want to involve, if you're a helper, you need to tell your ministry leader, this is the conversation I have. Likewise, if you're a leader, you need to be telling your helper and your observer, this is what we see happening with that seeker, even outside the ministry room. So the thing that I would ask you, whatever your role is, whether you are a ministry leader or you are a ministry helper, is to think about the impact that you want to have on the other person. So for those of you that have been ministry leaders, I'm just talking to you right now. What is it that you want your helper to feel? What's the impact you want to have on your helpers? Empowered? What else? Confident in them? Yeah? What else?
Part of the team. Productive.
Part of the team, productive, yeah. Valued, yeah. If you are a helper, what is it that you want your ministry leader to feel?
Trust.
Trust. It's good. What else?
That they can depend upon you.
Yes, I've got your back, that they can depend upon you. This is what I want when I'm a helper, and I told you I'm a helper a lot. When I'm a helper, this is what I want them to feel. I trust you to lead, and I've got your back. I trust you to lead, and I've got your back. That is what I want. That is what I want my leaders to feel like. Yeah. So it's this idea of being really deliberate. Because when you say, this is how I want to make that person feel, your decision, because we have good hearts. You're not in this ministry because you're a grouchy old person. You know, you've got a good heart. So if you're leading with great intent, If you have great intent and you're thinking about the impact that you want them to have, then the decisions that you make about the way in which you interact are gonna follow that. Because that's what it means to be a great team. And we want, helpers a lot of times have a very difficult job because they are like utility players. They're plugged in where we need them. And so we really want to get everything out of that team that we put together. The greatness, the great leading impact that our leaders have, the great helping impact that our helpers have, because that is us working together as the body of Christ. Because I guarantee you, rarely are you going to be teamed up with somebody that's wired just like you. That's not going to happen. That's not the way God does it. We have learned that through experience. Okay, so just some deliberateness around this relationship. What questions do you have or comments do you have about that? Questions about the relationship between a helper and a leader? Or, yeah, helper, leader, observer, whatever. Yeah, Sharon?
It's not really related to the relationship, but I've been exposed to where when we're going through ministry, and there's been times where there's been no break when we're doing the ministry. And is that part of the best practice where we do have the break so you can have that time?
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. It's a standard. We will take a break, but it doesn't always mean that the seeker leaves, so we'll talk more about that. But taking a break is good. And that is a great, and we'll talk about how you utilize the break time to the best of your advantage. That's a great question. Yeah.
One of the other things that we've been talking about between a leader and a helper is that when the break time comes, the leader and the helper go and discuss and pray about what they saw. Because sometimes we can communicate while we're there, but there's times when the leader will have questions about, okay, what did you see that I missed?
Yeah.
That's our time. And so one of the questions is does that make the seeker uncomfortable? Is that a good practice?
Well, we're going to talk more about that specifically, how we utilize our break times, but I think you're asking the right question, Linda, because I think that if they see me standing in the corner talking about them, that might make them feel uncomfortable. But then there might be a way that we can do that where they don't feel uncomfortable. So I think you're asking the right question because you're stepping up to the challenge of thinking about the impact on the seeker. That's exactly right. What else? Okay. Back to you, Dirk.
Thank you. We've worked at these very natural segues. Let's talk about the relationship between the team and the seeker. When I say team, I'm talking about leader and helper. They're dynamic with the seeker. So we've already talked about what we do to take care of the seeker. Let's talk kind of on a slightly different note about some boundaries. So first of all, when we're making up the team, I'm sorry, we're at the top of page 5. So when we're making up the groups, the ministry groups, this is going to be part of the process. This is going to be part of what we do is we always look into who's in this ministry group. Do you, as the leader or seeker, have any kind of relationship with any of the people that are potentially in your group that would, preclude you from doing ministry with them? So for me, I would just never do one. I would never do ministry, so never do. I would not do ministry with friends of mine, just because I don't want them to feel uncomfortable. And they may even say, hey man, it's fine, whatever. I wouldn't, just because there might be something in them where they got to think about, I'm going to see this guy for a long time, or I don't want to see him after this, and I'm not going to tell him everything. So always make sure that the people in your group are such that you probably don't know them, or your relationship isn't such that would affect the ministry. So boundaries, this is the standard. Team members of opposite gender should not have private, one-on-one conversations with seekers. I think that's just pretty self-explanatory. Be thoughtful about the access you allow between the seeker and you between class sessions. All right, so you're in this ministry because you have a big heart and you're probably really empathetic, all right, which is fantastic. There's a double-edged sword to every good gift that God has. And so here's what I would tell you just blanketly. You are not required to deal with them in between sessions. I'm telling you that as your pastor. You know, so you're not required to take all their phone calls or meet with them just because they want to, or stop, you know, if they want to pull you out of church because they have to talk to you. No, that is not required of you, period, okay? Boundaries are essential for you guys to keep from burning out or feel intruded upon, okay? So it is your choice, you know, in terms of if you want to meet with somebody or if you're allowing them, then that's fine. But I will warn you, be very careful, because here's what happens. You, as a player in a place of ministry, you know that you are just letting God work through you. But we're dealing with people that are still kind of a broken state, and it's easy for them to see you as the Messiah, the one that you're the one doing it. I need to be around you, and can we do this more? And this is such a high for me. Watch out for that. It is very dangerous, okay? Now, I mean, we're all human. We love it when somebody comes up to us and is just gushing over how great you did in ministry. And this is the God that I told you about, you know, or whatever. You have to be very careful of that, because the enemy will come in and make it very intoxicating that you're really good at ministry. Man, you hear the Holy Spirit better than anybody, all right? And we also, and this is a more rare occasion, but you'll get a seeker that's really broken and will want to text you and talk to you and blah, blah, blah. Make it very clear to them that they have me in a loving way, but, you know, I have to have boundaries. So one of my boundaries is I don't text with anybody I take that I'm, you know, doing ministry with, as a seeker in general, okay? So, again, there's about a million different permutations I can talk about, but just know that that is not required of you, all right? And if you choose to have communication with someone outside of class and as a seeker, be very careful. And if you have any questions at all, talk to one of us, talk to the leader of your class, and say, is this okay? And then we'll give you good counsel on that. This is a standard. When a seeker needs more ministry, it is at their request, not yours, as a leader. Don't say, oh, we have to do more ministry with you. I'll go ahead and schedule it for next week, whatever. No, that's their call, not yours, okay? So don't recommend, if they want to do it, that's great, but let them make that call, all right?
That might be hard. It might be hard because you might see something there, but that's not your job. That's about God. That's God's job. And we have to be obedient to what God says. And this ministry is that they come and we minister to them. We do not go out and tell them what they need.
Right.
And it's hard, but if we relinquish seekers, then it becomes easier.
Yes. All right, the difference, this is something that Marcia had alluded to, the difference between comforting a seeker and doing ministry. So this, as the class progresses, we find this happens more often. That they'll be watching a lesson or hearing a testimony, and someone will get triggered as a seeker, and you'll see them run out the door, getting very emotional. So you follow them out there. This would be a same-sex situation. You follow them out there. Hey, how's it going? What's going on? Well, So it's okay to comfort. If you're again, this scenario I'm painting here. You're talking, and you're comforting them. You're saying, look, man, okay, you're praying, no, stop. You're being present with them. I'm here for you, I understand, okay. That's comforting. Now, as soon as you start having them pray or suggest, well, we probably just need to break that spirit of blah, blah, blah. You're now doing ministry. And all of the requirements of ministry then trigger and go into effect. So you need to have a helper there. You need all the different conditions that we talk about. So it's easy to have that happen. You know, it's easy to all of a sudden find yourself in a situation where you're all of a sudden doing ministry with somebody. So that is not okay. You know, if you're comforting, that's fine. And again, I can't give you an exact, basically once you start, you know, having them pray and break things or renounce things or forgive, you are now doing ministry. All right, and that's not okay in that situation. Okay? Standard, if a seeker verbalizes that they may harm themselves or others, they should be immediately reported to the executive team. You can just tell your class leader and they'll tell us. okay? Be self-explanatory. Give no advice, that's again, just a standard. You should go talk to your mother and tell her this. You should never talk to your father again, blah, blah, blah. Advice, just don't give it. Sheila's going to talk a little bit more in depth about the leader-seeker relationship and what is ideal.
So I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about the situation being what is an ideal situation between a seeker and team, or leaders, leader, helper, that type of thing. Pastor Fred, he talks a lot about this church and other churches being like a hospital. That analogy is, what I'm talking about how, we receive whoever wants to walk in the door. You don't have to be cleaned up to come in the door, right? You can be broken, you can be wounded, you can be unsaved, that this is a safe place to come. And so as I thought about that, as I listened to that, so hospitals have different departments, right? They have different rooms, they all that stuff. So I kind of see the Oaks ministry in this hospital as being like a trauma center. Mm-hmm. We are kind of a point in time. We take the wounded, the most severe. And we are, one of the reasons that this ministry is so unique is that training happens. We are highly trained to deal with the seekers and with the wounds that they come in with. The thing is that just like a trauma center does, we are in a short-term situation. So day 1, session 1 to session 20, we know what our job is. And we, for sure, make a safe environment. We've talked about that. We talk about how that it is to be seeker-led, that they are the ones in control, yet we lead them. We'll talk more about that later on. The thing is that we have to really know what our boundaries are. That's what you've been hearing, right? Is the discussion about what are healthy boundaries. So that after session 20, that point in time ends, what is it that we want the seeker to do? Isn't it our hope that they go out into this hospital and that they are changed in some way because they have a different understanding of the Holy Spirit? There's been healing that has happened in this trauma center. And now we call it next steps. They are going out into this hospital to find out what their next step is. So what is our role in that? I mean, when we are here in this trauma center, one of the things that Dirk said is, we're not saying you can't do that, you can't have a relationship with them. It is about what kind of a relationship are we going to have with them. Because we may see them, we may never see them again. But we also may see them, right? And so it's really about being thoughtful and mindful of what our role is and what it's not. Right? So how do you guys feel about that? Let me ask it in this way. One of the things that we really need to be mindful of is not confusing the seeker and what our role is. So in what ways can a seeker become confused? How can a seeker become confused in that?
Thinking we have the answer.
Thinking that we have all the answers? Yeah. How else?
Lack of consistency in your styles, like leader role versus helper role.
So that they may relate more to one person than to another person?
No, like if you kind of change things up halfway through ministry. Like if you've set boundaries on, okay, before
Okay.
Like if the leader and the helper are kind of going back and forth as being the leader, like you were saying.
Yeah, that's kind of what you.
Okay, okay.
Stella had something.
Stella?
I really like the boundaries idea and being clear. I think even like upfront what your non-negotiables are. I've been in situations where people, want to friend me on Facebook or they, want to get my phone number and like, I didn't know what to say because it's like, I don't hurt their feelings. They just had this really emotional thing happen. So if I'm clear about, well, I don't, thank you so much. But I don't normally do that, when I've done ministry with someone or whatever mine might be. I think having those beforehand so that we're not caught off guard, because sometimes, like I had a situation where I gave someone my phone number and the first time they texted me 95 times.
Right.
I'm not kidding.
Wow.
So it was like, it became this whole huge thing that I had to get a pastor involved. And like, it was just pretty intense. Because I didn't want to hurt their feelings. And I thought that they could take some social cues and they could not.
Right.
They could not take social cues. So now it's like, our sort of rote with it is, we just don't give out phone numbers. That's kind of a standard that we do. But before it was like, well, I've done it like, 20 times and it's been totally fine.
Right.
So I think, like you're saying, boundaries for sure. I have to have boundaries with teenagers, but for sure in this.
Right. So you have clear.
I think we need to clarify though, that when she says that's a standard, we're not asking you to make that a standard. That is in her ministry. It is your choice what you do, but it is great wisdom to think it through.
Yes.
I think something that happens, I'm not a leader, I'm an observer, but I think something that happens coming from the seeker's standpoint, like an initial mindset that you go through right after you're done with Oaks, and then like you get over it is Oaks is the only source of healing, Oaks is the best source of healing, the Oaks leaders are the only ones that are trained with wisdom, and then like after an extended point in time, you're like, oh, my grandma's been a Christian for 65 years. Like, she has some valid points. Like, what is she doing wrong?
Oh, she doesn't. Listen to her.
It's like Oaks is not the only source of healing. And I think that that's like a misconception that seekers might have initially, like, in Oaks.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. That can become really confusing for people sometimes. Leisha.
I was also going to say that a lot of times they confuse the intimacy in that ministry room for friendship.
Oh,
yes.
And it's just really important to share that even before the ministry time, is that it's kind of a neutral ground and it's not really a friendship. It's not a give and take. Because I actually had a seeker ask me, well, when do we hear your stuff?
Oh.
You don't.
Here's the thing, you don't.
Right. It can become like that. An expectation of reciprocation, right? Because you are absolutely right on point about how there is an intimacy that happens between in ministry, because they are sharing some of the most grievous, some of the most awful things that happen in their lives, the greatest pain, and for sure, if you've developed, because it is the crux of it that we offer them safety and trust, we offer them confidentiality, we offer all these things, and that is the balance of having those healthy boundaries and being able to speak that to them. Because it is easy for them to get confused, for sure.
I think, that is such a good point, because I had to learn that kind of the hard way, that, friendship and ministry are very different.
Yes.
We minister to our friends sometimes, so.
Right.
But yet, that's not the same as ministry.
Right.
And, but I have found that there are certain people that God places in our life, during Oaks, at least I do, that I do have a relationship with. Now, I'm still more the mentor with them, but it's the whole thing of kind of reading how the situation is going while you're in Oaks. If they're codependent, no. Right. But if it's a healthy relationship, there are certain times when I have several people that I have ongoing, not a lot, but a few that are ongoing relationships that are healthy. And so I think it's that whole thing of really reading the cues, you know, when we're in ministry with them, or when, you know, when in Oaks in general, those, you know, those 10 weeks of how do they interact with us.
Right.
And so it's listening to the Holy Spirit, being all sensitive. And I'm not saying all the time, but I'm just saying sometimes the Lord does that and puts people together.
Right.
And it can be a very healing thing for them. But yet again, that whole ministry and friendship thing has to be walked very carefully.
Yeah, exactly. Because, and I will say this, but that's true. That's why we're not saying don't do a Bible study, don't, you know. However, you have to be very thoughtful, because we're going to go back to the intent and impact for just a second. And so you may have provided an opportunity, whether it's through, you know, whatever means goes beyond that. The thing is that what is the impact that it is having on that seeker? And because, again, if there's not clarity in it, then you can end up hurting them.
Right.
They're going to get hurt.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. You've got, you know, to read the cues and also have, you know, maybe even a discussion of how that looks.
Yeah.
I'm just saying there are times when the Lord really puts people together and in your life for a reason.
Right.
You know, beyond Oaks, but yet at the same time, many times it's just for that season. You know, for
Yes.
sure. I'm not saying, you know.
Right. Right, and it's a delicate walk, for sure, it's a very delicate walk.
Right.
And so we just have to be really clear about what our boundaries need to be. And because here's the thing, we sure cannot, I mean, you know, if you're ministering to 6 people each class, and you do 2 classes, 3 classes a year, I mean, it's going to accumulate pretty quickly.
Right.
And that's going to be part, and it's very easy, again, for them to have an expectation that we cannot meet. And that, and yet, we can also, though, help them bridge into what it is that they can, because we know, we're all sitting here knowing that there's a lot of people that this is the first time that they've gotten to tell their entire story, or that they may not have a lot of friends, or, right, or that this is the time in which their pain somebody's cared for them. You know, somebody has listened to them for the first time.
That's the exception rather than the rule. That
Yeah.
the relationship doesn't, but it does happen at times. I mean,
Yeah, but it does.
right.
It happens.
So I think it's just that whole thing of, you know, I mean, like we're saying that, just to be aware that can happen, and it can be a relationship.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and it's our responsibility. It's not that the seeker got it wrong.
Right.
The seeker was in a relationship with you where they may have been more intimate with you than any other person on the planet. So the seeker doesn't get it wrong. It's us having to speak what that is, and us being really clear.
Yep.
It's just our responsibility.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh.
Or if there's any...
I think that's good enough. I think we definitely covered.
I'm good.
All right.
Just to make sure that if there's any other questions or...
Well,
Yeah.
one of the things
Yes.
that I really notice in ministry time as a helper is when the seeker becomes very emotional. And to me, I think it's very important to watch how you touch them, because then sometimes that can imprint on them a physical touch and an emotion. And I've noticed that I've heard it in the ministries before, but it's like it's very, it's impactful to the seeker to have, to imprint on, like say for instance, they're used to telling a story, or if they're really used to giving attention that way, and then all of a sudden it becomes and what I mean by touch is tug, or to kind of, you know.
It comes back to what Marcia was talking about in terms of intent and impact. So something that you meant as just a comforting touch can be received in an entirely different way. So All right, let's talk about the relationship between seekers, okay? As you lead the groups in this class, this is something you have to keep an eye on, because here's what happens. There's a lot of different dynamics, and if you're not paying attention, you might miss it. And you might misinterpret things, you know. But so here's some different things that we've all seen this in terms of how seekers interact. Watch it mostly on break is where you're going to see it, because then they got to kind of move where they want. They get to talk to who they want to, and you get to see things happen. So here's the different things that are different relationships that we've seen form. So you see the seasoned Christian and the new Christian, right? And this often takes the shape of, well, let me tell you how things really are type thing. It's going to have that kind of, you're new here. And so the thing is, we're a seeker-friendly church. We have a lot of new believers, or a lot of people that are just starting out in their faith. And their default is, oh, this person knows a lot about the Bible, so I need to listen to them. And that is not necessarily the case, Some people use Bible knowledge as kind of a club to beat people up with, or do all kinds of different things. So watch for that. Watch when you see somebody who's, taking that kind of relationship of, actually, the Bible says is blah, blah. Watch out for that, okay? And I'm going to tell you each one of these, and then we're going to talk about how to kind of interrupt that in a proper way. Men and women. Oh, yeah, this is one where we see this where Oaks is primarily, a lot of our classes are just primarily women, And they think that if a guy is, in some cases, they'll think that if a guy is in there, that he's a good, strong Christian man, and he's just trying to get some help, Well, we're all broken, And so often, I always say that with the female-male dynamic, brokenness can find each other in the worst possible way, okay? And I won't go into detail on that. We're all grown-ups, we're going to see how that goes. Watch for that. Watch for, at its worst, it's predatory behavior, You see that guy that comes in and he wants to be the shoulder they cry on, He wants to be, I totally get that. I can't believe someone would treat you that way, blah, blah, blah. Watch for that. That's really obvious when you see that kind of behavior. And when you see the same people meeting each break, that's red flags all over the place. With male, female especially, where it's like every break these two are together, they're off kind of to the side. Get on that immediately, okay? And again, I'm going to talk about in a minute here, how we do that. Advice givers, people that all of a sudden think they're part of the team, and they come by and, well, what they meant by relinquishment is, it's like, no, you're a seeker, you are learning with everybody else. You are not part of this team, And you want to, when you see this, so those are all things you're going to look for. Be very aware of those things. And the thing is, typically, if it just doesn't feel right or look right to you, there's something in your spirit that's like, it seems like something's going on there. It's okay to interrupt. Now, I actually want you to talk about this. You do a good job of, when you see something, to kind of busting in a very friendly, godly way, and kind of, talk to us about what you do.
Yeah, I just go up to him. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? I do. I literally just walk up, and I might just pull my chair up and sit down. Hey, what are you guys talking about? And, don't be afraid to do that. There have been people, we have seen, I don't remember who all it was, maybe Joy and Sheila, I don't know, but there was a male and female that were hooking up out in the parking lot a lot, and we literally would go out and just stand next to them and be like, what are you guys talking about? I have no shame in that, because you know what? I am empowered to be the leader and to keep them safe. And what they do outside of here is not my responsibility. I have no responsibility for what they do, but I have responsibility to them, because we bring them to a really vulnerable place, you guys. Because they come here and they participate, we bring them to a place of vulnerability that is beyond what they might have before they start coming to Oaks. And so don't be ashamed of that. Just roll on up. And the other thing is that when you can help this, so it doesn't seem awkward, if that feels really awkward, you can help this by making it clear when you're talking, if Mark and I, if he's a seeker and I am the leader, and he and I are having a conversation, or he stops me in the hall, I say, hold on just 1 second, let me grab another person. We have a rule in our church that men and women do not have private conversations. Did you know that's a rule in our church? Yeah. And it's just smart thinking, you know? And so if I'm doing that, if I'm mimicking that I'm not having private conversations, then the fact that I roll up on somebody else's conversation, you know? I mean, they think I'm rude sometimes. But here's the thing, is that I'm stopping the conversation from going someplace that it shouldn't. And if they're just talking about what they're gonna do on you know, how each of them are gonna be celebrating Thanksgiving, ask me. I'll tell you how I'm gonna do it, and I'll just join the conversation. Don't be afraid of that. Be empowered to bring safety to the seekers. We brought them to a place of vulnerability by inviting them in. Now let's care for them.
No.
Yeah.
So there you go, that gives you kind of a good feel for that. So you want to encourage healthy relationships. When you see people being supportive of one another in a good way, encourage those relationships. People that are taking these roles of leadership and advice giving and whatever, encourage them to receive. It's like, you know, I mean, I really appreciate all the experience you have, but right now this is a great opportunity for you to just kind of sit back and learn and take this in, and this is your time to kind of receive, you know, just frame it that way. So as we're getting ready to wind up here, the last thing I want to talk about is seekers hurting other seekers. There's another thing that I'm very passionate about. Part of being on sacred ground, again, is that we've reiterated over and over again. It's your job as leaders to make everybody safe, okay? And I will say this is definitely not something that's very common, but it's something that I will definitely want to talk to you about. So when you see a seeker talking to another seeker, and I want to talk about a situation that was the most egregious, that was the worst I've seen of this. So I want to use it just as an example of how this happened. So there was a guy. This one where I was leading the class when you guys were helping, and we went around for introductions the first day, and this guy was the single most obnoxious guy I've ever met in my life, and that's saying something. And so I was sitting back there listening to him, and he was like, just blah, 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 blah. And not me, like he introduced himself as Osama bin Laden, and da-da-da-da-da, just obnoxious. I mean, it's not like just a me thing. It was like he was going out of his way to just be, I'm the most obnoxious guy you've ever met. And so I heard him do his intro, I'm like, oh, great. And I leaned over to Marcia, and I'm like, I'm kicking this guy out. I'm like, I'm smashing this guy, he's not staying in this class. And she's like, no, you know, he's doing that because he's hurt, and he's doing that so you'll reject him just like everybody else has. I'm like, oh, okay, great, fine, whatever, you know? It's like I should have that attitude, but I don't. That's why Marcia's such a very valuable relationship to me. I'm like, okay. So what he had said was, he goes, and I don't think I'm revealing it. I said, he says, well, I'm a writer, and I'm going to write about all your stories, but let's change your names. Oh my God, freaked everybody out, you know. And so I go, come on, kick this guy out of the class. He's like, go talk to him. I'm like, all right. So I go, hey, you, come here, you know. I said, it was the second day of class. I said, the whole thing with the writing the book thing, that was no-go. So you're going to go in here, you're going to apologize to everybody, and you're going to tell them you're not going to do it if you want to stay in this class. Oh, okay. And so then he comes up in the class and he says, and he kind of says that and apologizes, but then he says something at the end where it sounds like he's still going to do it. And so I checked him right there and I shouted his name. I won't use his name, but it was like when I talked to one of my kids, I'm like, dude! He's like, oh, sorry, I'm joking. Okay. And so she goes, that was good, because that shows the whole class you're going to stand up for him. I'm like, okay, great. So he stays in class, and he knew then he wasn't going to get any play in the class. He was, behaving himself. And so then he switches over to the night class because that's where he feels he can cause the most problems. But I think that's, Sure enough, he goes to the night class, and in his ministry, there was another guy there, and he just talked about some extraordinarily vulnerable, awful things that had happened to him. Well, our friend totally mocked him for it. I mean, out and out, just boom. I mean, and I was like, so as it happened through the grapevine, I heard about this, and Marcia let me know. And I was like, I will take care of this, And so the first thing I did was I called him. I said, did this happen? He said, yes. And I said, my exact words to him were, I have grown weary of your behavior. You are no longer welcome in this class. You are kicked out. Do not come back. I said, but you will find the seeker, I told him his name, and you will apologize to him and you will ask him for forgiveness for what you did. And he said, okay. And so then I went to class that night, to the night class, and apologized to the whole class for what had happened. And most of them were not necessarily aware of it. But the way I run things is, if it happened in Oaks, it's my responsibility. I don't put that on the leader. I don't put it on whatever else, I said, it is my fault that this happened, that I allowed this to happen. It was my choice to let him stay in class. And I ask you all for your forgiveness for allowing that to happen. And as a side note, as I was speaking, the dude walks in the door, the guy that and he comes in and gets the guy that he talked to and takes him out and apologizes to him while I'm giving this big talk about him, right? So good on him. He did what I asked him to do. I say that because I want to illustrate to you, so this is the upshot of it. This is what I really want to drive home to you guys. You are empowered by me when something like that is occurring in any way, shape, or form. You are responsible for getting them out immediately, okay? You will not get in trouble. You will be fine. I will take care of everything from that point on. But what happened on that night was I talked to the leader of that group, and I said, were you there when this happened? And he said, yeah. I said, why didn't you do something? Well, I thought I couldn't do something like that. That was not in my power, I was like, are you kidding me? I said, you should have kicked them out immediately and then told them I would call them, right? So that's what I'm telling you all, that I trust your instincts, and I trust all of you because you have such great hearts are going to lean more toward, well, let's, So there is a balance between grace and accountability, okay? Very critical juncture for you guys to be at. Because I think a lot of you probably would have made the same call of just like, oh, let's just come settle down, don't do that anymore, whatever, because you want to be good to this guy. Well, as soon as this guy becomes the perpetrator of pain in your group, it's your responsibility to get rid of that person. Grace is not a factor in that, okay? So I want you all to know that. I'm telling you that now as the pastor over this. You're in charge of, if that ever happens or anything like that, kick him out, get out, I'll deal with you later, and then just call me and I'll take it from there, okay? You are empowered to do that. Because again, sacred ground. And it is my responsibility to make sure that ground stays untouched. And that's the way, like I said, this is a single example. It's not too common, thank goodness. But I don't think it's common because people just know that won't do, and this is not the environment for it to happen, okay? So just know that I will always have your back. As anybody who has worked for me or led for me, and they will tell you the same. That you are my people, and I will always have your back. Whatever instincts you have to do it, do it. Because that's why you wouldn't be in this ministry if you didn't know what you were doing and you weren't doing God's work in it. Okay? And that's why you guys are very special in what you do. The fact that you're all here on a Friday night, I mean, come on, That to me says everything about why you guys are important to this church, right? So just make sure that you know that, you guys know the right thing to do in these situations. Just do them and don't worry about anything that's going to, happen because you have my blessing on it, you have my backing, okay? So anyway, What do we have, what do you guys have to follow up with? We're gonna go to like a big general Q&A after this, so think about your questions, but you guys, anything else you want to add to?
No.
Yeah, all right. Couple of quick reminders. Take your questions. If you have, I want everyone to write a question, even if it's whatever it is, write a question, drop it in the red bowl over there.
You don't have to put your name on it.
Yeah, you don't have to, that's fine. This is, we're gonna have a Q&A after this, but I just want to do this before we all break up. We start at 9 o'clock tomorrow. Be prompt, we want to start right at 9, so we've got a ton of stuff to cover. And we're gonna start with worship again tomorrow, and same thing. We have a lot of great stuff tomorrow. It's all about ministry tomorrow, okay? Ministry day. Anything at all about what we covered tonight? What questions do you guys have?
What's our question supposed to be about?
Oaks.
If there's anything you would like to hear us speak about, make sure that we cover. We've had to limit what we talk about because we only want to keep you for 3 hours tomorrow. But if it's going to be related to a topic that we are going to cover, we will make sure we answer it. If it's not, we want to make sure that we have it queued up for a later time.
Yeah, we will cover.
So we're meeting in here, there's Harvesters tomorrow morning, right?
Mhm. Yeah, just make your way through the crowd.
Yeah.
And by 9 o'clock it started.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so no worries.
Sharon, did you have something?
Yeah, in the situation you were talking about, the difficult person, let's say a woman is a ministry leader, and let's say you're coming against a man and a guy who, I know who you're talking about. Do we typically always have, like, at least a man that's gonna be present in either nighttime or daytime? So if a woman is, you know what I'm saying, that's kind of hard for a woman to come against somebody who's like that.
Right.
You know what I mean? That could be a difficult.
It's not part of our makeup to make sure there's like a male. Ideally, we'd have a male and a female. That would be ideal, but it just as it stands, and it's not a standard or a best practice at this point. If we can do a point where we've got enough guys, we need we need men at Oaks. I totally get your point. You know, Stella, do you have something?
Well, I led Oaks twice, and we've had to have Dirk has had my back, and it's been uncomfortable. But I'm glad that you're saying this because I felt so encouraged because I had some holy discontent, and it was my helper. I think it was an observer that talked too much. And I had to stop in the middle of him giving direction while someone else had just taught. And I'm like, we're not doing this. I got off in the front. I was like, we are not doing this. We are done. We are moving on. But it's because I talked to him about it. So I'm glad that you're saying this because it is uncomfortable, especially if you're in ministry time. You know, you want to be loving, but if that person's hurting someone else, it's like, I'm sorry, we're going to have to stop this. You need to leave the room, and we can discuss this later. But I think that is, like, I've never had a problem coming to any of you about it, and I think that knowing that going into it, like, that we have that ability is really helpful.
That's good. Thank you, Stella. Yeah, that's good. So yeah, that's the best. I mean, I wish I had it better, you know. Just go in with full confidence. Pretend like it's one of your kids. That's what I do. I mean, then you're like, boom, you know. You drop that hammer real easy then, right? What other questions you guys have? Anything at all? There's got to be some. Man. We talked about so much tonight.
I worked with a leader before that would almost start volunteering, like, after the first 5 minutes. Oh, this is going to take multiple sessions, so we'll do one tonight, and then I'll get with you after the class, and we'll do others,
Oh, yeah.
you know.
So that is what we would never want to do.
Yeah, don't do that. That's why we're doing this.
And that is exactly the reason why we're doing this, because there's a belief system. Here's the thing, the person that said that had the right heart.
Yeah.
The person who said that had the right heart about wanting the person, that seeker, to be free. It's just that we also send what's the impact on the seeker when they hear that? Oh my word.
Yeah.
They're cursed. They're cursed. They're
Yeah.
condemned, you know?
Yeah. And I worked with one that really peeled the onion back too far. I mean, they were really telling this person that to go home, and they didn't love that child, and just tell them. And I mean, it's kind of like, you know, after an hour, they were making that kind of determination and giving that kind of
Advice.
and, you know,
I was really, concerned.
The thing is, and like I said, that's the whole reason why we're doing this.
Yeah.
You know, this is just absolutely confirms is that, that's why we're all getting on the same page. That's why I love how many people are, because this is the Oaks ministry right now as it stands at this exact moment. And things like that, due to the fact that we can't be every place at every time, and the ministry is a very private and personal thing, that we don't want to barge in on like, oh, we see what's going on here type of thing. This is why, as we make standards and best practices for what we're doing, that kind of thing, then you're like, yeah, no, I have it right here that this is not what we're supposed to do,
And I would follow that up with, so then tell us that. Because our heart is not to tell a ministry leader, you dummy. That's not our heart. Because I believe that we do this because God calls us to do this. I believe we do this because of the love that we have for others. I believe that people volunteer their time and sit and listen to this excruciating stuff because we want people to have the experience that we had and because we love Jesus. I believe that. And so it isn't a matter of you screwed up, but rather let's think through what the impact was. That goes back to, they said it with great intent. When you tell somebody that they're sinning in ministry, you might say it with great intent. The question is, how does it land? And when we're in this really holy space. And so we just want to know that so that we can have, we can help them.
Yeah.
That's what we want. My gosh, if I didn't have people that helped me, good grief, I would have been doing some crazy stuff in ministry. I've just had really great people come into my life that have helped me.
Yeah. And that's why, I don't like really clear, this isn't like a witch, and like who's doing what, we're just we feel like this is kind of a marker moment where at this point going forward, you all know the standards now, and so that's where our expectation is that we go forward, we start putting these all into practice, and that we get better at what we do, we become better stewards of our gifts, So don't worry about whatever you've been doing for the whole country or I do all that stuff, don't worry about it,
Dirk used to sit across the circle from people.
I did. I was like, okay, you feel okay? Okay, great. Yeah, I'll be the first to admit I'm just like, I can sit right next to him. It's a standard I have to do.
It says it so on the paper.
All right, what other questions you guys have? Any questions? Yeah, Laura.
Okay, this sounds really technical.
Sure.
It's more nuts and bolts rather than the touchy-feely stuff.
Sure.
So now it's a standard practice to have a debrief after ministry with the leader and the helper. It used to be once upon a time that come hell or high water, you better be out of this building at 9 o'clock.
Yeah, that's no longer the case.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, don't stay till midnight or anything, but that was when we first had that policy, when we first got the doors going, it was that, but don't, so don't worry, but also, if you have to do it on the front porch, that's fine too, or that's.
When it's 3 degrees out.
Well, I'm talking about summer, or spring, in winter, stay indoors.
But as a leader, you got to think that through.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the planning that you have to do up front. If you're a leader and if it's at night and you're watching your watch, you've got to plan for that because now you know that conversation is part of our expectation.
Right.
And that's also one of the things the helper can do is with the time because it's not always easy for the person who's talking.
We'll talk about that tomorrow. It's all tomorrow, timing.
I forgot.
No, we got it all, that's another, we're talking about timing tomorrow. All right, what other questions do you guys have?
I'll do it tomorrow.
Questions about anything at all? All good? All right. So, don't forget, don't break it in, I pray. Cards and baskets, 9 o'clock tomorrow. Thank you for being here. 9, yeah. Thank you all for being here, this is awesome. We're going to go out. Father God, thank you so much for this day. Thank you for all the work that you've done here tonight. Thank you for everybody that's here, Lord. Thank you for their hearts. Thank you for the way you wired them up. And thank you for their desire to just draw closer to you and to do your will at this church. So I just pray you seal the work that was done here tonight. Surround everybody with your hedge of protection and just bring them all back tomorrow. We just lift this up in your name. Amen. All right. That's it.